Hello everybody, welcome to this IELTS listening preparation video. Today I'm going to tell you all about the note, form, and table completion question type for the listening section of the IELTS exam. You should be really excited because this is the most popular, well-known question type, and guess what? It's considered the easiest question type. Now I'll walk you through this because even though this is considered to be very easy, when compared to the other question types, there are still some pitfalls and some things you'll have to watch out for. And of course, there's a great strategy that we need to prepare ourselves with in order to be fully ready for this question type and the listening exam. So without further ado, let's get started and talk about this question. I'd just like to go over a brief overview and run through of what you can expect with this question type. First off, you'll have to fill in missing words of a form, an outline, or a table. Now, the note and form examples are quite similar, but today we'll be going over two examples. One will be a form and the other will be a note and table. So you'll see the differences, although the strategy for all three of these is the same. So you'll have to fill in these missing words, and the gaps may appear anywhere in the sentence or on the form or in the piece of writing that you have on your visual aid. If you are familiar with the sentence completion question type, we have a video on that as well, but this is different because in that question type, gaps are usually seen at the end. In this case, the gaps can be anywhere, really. And it does not always feature full sentences. This is perhaps one of the main reasons why this question type appears to be so simple. You are just writing in blanks of points or times or gaps, not necessarily full sentences. However, it still is a bit challenging. Of course, we're going to use the scanning technique. So we're going to pull out our keywords before we listen, and we're going to listen for these important words that will call our attention to the answers. And you can expect to start from the top of your note, form, or table and go all the way to the bottom. So in other words, you can expect that this will be in order. Now here's a guide for what we're going to be doing today. And this guide is a bit different than the other question types, so pay attention. First off, we're going to read the information and become familiar with the type of visual aid we have. We're going to use the visual aid to our advantage. Now, as we read, we should be underlining keywords. This step is going to be minimal, so I would suggest combining it with step number 1, reading the information. Now, as we listen to the listening prompt, we're going to take notes according to the section. Today, we're going to be in 2 different sections. But unlike the other question types, we really wouldn't suggest making a separate outline or chart for this type of question. You should really just write directly on your visual aid or keep an outline on your visual aid. This question type is usually going to be with a monologue in section 2 or a conversation in section 1 in most cases. Of course, anything can really happen, but you can expect that this question will be in sections 1 or sections 2. We'll go through the strategy for taking notes in just 1 minute, but be aware that you'll write directly on the visual aid or right next to it. And of course, since you're going to be writing out words, it's extremely important to be accurate. You want to pay attention to how many words you need to write, 1 word, up to 3 words. This will vary. And you want to make sure that you're writing in a legible manner. We suggest all capital letters. We'll be looking at sections 1 and 2. Our first example will be in section 1. And with section 1, you can expect to hear a conversation between 2 people. And the topic will be general, an everyday topic. Generally, we would use the chart system for this to take our notes. But since we have a visual aid today, either a form, a table, or notes to fill in, we're going to work directly on the visual aid. Of course, we can keep a chart right next to it, or we can make a couple of columns just to get the information clear, but I'll take you through this in our example in just a bit. This section is known for being one of the easiest sections, if not the easiest, because it's a general topic. Our second example will feature section 2, and now this section is a monologue, so you'll hear only one person speaking. Just like section 1, it will be a general topic, and so you'll have to follow key information in the monologue. An outline system is really best for keeping all this information clear, but the visual aid will probably already be in some sort of outline or note fashion, so we can take a small outline down right next to the visual aid, and we'll go through this together as well. Okay, let's get started with our first example. All right, so here is our first example. We see a form. So this is questions 1 through 8. Complete the form below. And it's some sort of form for a shipping agency, so that's good to know. But it's very important to note the directions, which we see right here. Write no more than 3 words and or a number. So that is our limit for the answers. Now, before we start listening, I just want to emphasize the fact that this is already in a nice outlined fashion for us. And remember, this is section 1. So we're going to hear a conversation between 2 people. Now, usually we would encourage you to make a chart so that you can understand what one person is saying over the other. In this case, you could still make a chart if you'd like to, but notice how the answers come from the top to the bottom, which we can expect everything to come in order. The keywords are here for us, and this specific question type is not asking us for specific details regarding each speaker. Instead, it's asking us for information like name and town. So I would not worry about making a chart in this case. Remember, this question type is a bit different than the rest. What I would do is make notes right here next to your visual aid and fill in the information as necessary because everything is labeled for you. That's why this question type is generally considered to be pretty easy. So before we listen, we're going to take some time to read the information and underline our key words. Keywords in this case are very minimal and they're quite simple. It will just be this information here that we're reading. So in this case, it would be best to do this at the same time. We're going to read the information and underline the keywords. So again, it's going to be a shipping agency. Okay, this is a customer quotation form. So we can expect one person to be the customer and the other person to be perhaps a customer service representative or someone from Packham's shipping agency. Now, an example has been done for us. The country of destination is Kenya. Let's go ahead and read down below. We see name is Jacob, and you see how there is something here. Now, Jacob is a first name, so we can be on the lookout for a surname. So that's good to remember here. We have address to be collected from, and we already have a city perhaps or an address because this would be RD. So we'll have to look for information here. We have the town as Bristol, and we'll need a postcode. Now, if you're familiar with postcodes, you should know that they could be either numbers or letters. So this is very important here. And now we have the size of container. So the keywords would be size and container. We see length quite simply as 1.5 meters, width and height. Now you might expect to hear something like how wide is it or how high is it? So be aware of these synonyms. However, you can expect that numbers will be here for 4 and 5, just like the length. Now we're almost finished. We go to contents. Now we see something with clothes. So you can expect the speaker to say 3 different things. 1 will be clothes, and then we'll have 6 and 7. Remember, when you have questions like this, you do not necessarily have to put them in the order that you hear them. So for example, something could go in 6 just as it could go in 7. There is not one specific answer for 6, and there is not one specific answer for 7. So that actually works out in our favor. And then the last one is the total estimated value. Very important for the total here. We're going to need a number as this is pounds. And that's it. That is the information here and the keywords that we need to look for. I even did this a bit slower than I normally would, just so that everything was clear. So you could do this very quickly in your 20 seconds. Now here on the right-hand side, we can ignore that for now. I am going to paste the transcript after we listen to this when we go ahead and check our answers. In these boxes, I will be typing my notes as we listen together, and then I'll simply drag and drop these boxes to the area that I would write it in during the actual test. Just trying to make the most use of our visual aid today. At home, you can go ahead and follow along with us, maybe writing your notes on a separate piece of paper, or if you have printed this out or if you have access to this visual aid, you can write along as I'm going to be, just so it's clear for you. Most of all, pay attention to your keywords and do not lose track. Okay, let's start listening.
You will hear a telephone conversation between a customer and an agent at a company which ships large boxes overseas.
Good morning, Packham's shipping agents. Can I help you?
Oh, yes. I'm ringing to make inquiries about sending a large box, a container, back home to Kenya from the UK.
Yes, of course. Would you like me to try and find some quotations for you?
Yes, that'd be great. Thank you.
Well, first of all, I need a few details from you.
Fine.
Can I take your name?
It's Jacob Mkere.
Can you spell your surname, please?
Yes, it's Mkere.
Is that M for mother?
Yes,
Thank you. And you say that you will be sending the box to Kenya.
that's right.
And where would you like the box picked up from?
From college, if possible.
Yes, of course. I'll take down the address now.
It's Westall College.
Is that Westall?
Yes, college.
Westall College. And where's that?
It's Downlands Road in Bristol.
Oh, yes, I know it. And the postcode?
It's BS8 9PU.
Right. And I need to know the size.
Yes, I've measured it carefully and it's 1.5 meters long,
Right.
0.75 meters wide,
Okay.
and it's 0.5 meters high or deep.
Great. So I'll calculate the volume in a moment and get some quotes for that. But first, can you tell me, very generally, what will be in the box?
Yes, there's mostly clothes
Okay.
and there's some books.
Okay, good. Anything else?
Yes, there's also some toys.
Okay, and what is the total value, do you think, of the contents?
Well, the main costs are the clothes and the books. They'll be about £1,500. But then the toys are about another 200. So I'd put down £1,700.
Okay, excellent. I hope you were able to follow along with that, and I hope you were able to recognize just how simple this question type was. Now, I have my notes here in these boxes. I hope you were able to see when I was typing and when I moved them over. Before we even start checking this, I just want to go over this last one here, the total estimated value. We'll look at the wording and the transcript later when we look at our answers, but you notice how there were 3 numbers here. Now, I wrote all 3 of these numbers just because I was taking notes and I didn't want to miss anything. But I know that only the last number was correct. So this is a common trick, and this is sort of one of those difficulties with this question type, is to include many letters, many numbers, and then only include the correct answer at the end. So in this case, I would eliminate or put a line through these 2 options and only write 1,700 on my answer sheet. All right, we'll look at that at the end. Right now, I would like to just focus on the answers up here and understanding some of these explanations and the strategy. So the notes I had here, large box and UK to Kenya, these are just for my own notes because I was taking a lot of notes just as I was going and I didn't want to miss anything. You don't have to write this, I just wanted to get into the habit. On the right, we'll be able to see all of the transcript as we continue on, but the answers are in red. So as we go on, I will just keep moving and scrolling on up. Now, first off, we have the name. So Jacob and a surname. Now, this is quite a difficult surname to pronounce. And usually when we have this sort of question type in section 1, there will be some sort of name. The answer will be spelled out for you more than likely, just because it's a bit difficult to spell special nouns like this that are not actually words, they're names. So don't be surprised if the names are always spelled out for you. This is so you can understand your letters and write down notes as they are spelled. So this question, number 1, tested our ability to write down letters and keep up with the pace of the speaker. So Jacob McKeer, M-K-E-R-E. And the speaker said, is that M for mother? Just to make sure that it's clear for the test taker, it's M, not M, and yes, it is. So this is a common spelling question. You'll more than likely see this on the exam, so it might be a good idea to brush up on your spelling while you're at it. Now, we can go ahead and just eliminate this so we have more room on our transcript side. And let's look at number 2. She goes, I'll take down the address now. So the address was one of our keywords. Perfect. And he says it's Westall College. I went ahead and just typed it as I assumed it was spelled, and I was correct, but this will also be spelled out for you because it is not a word, it's a name. So we have W-E-S-T-A-L-L, College, Downlands Road. Perfect. Then we had the town is Bristol. The postcode, as I said earlier, is a mix of letters and numbers in this case. Same thing, it will be spelled out for you. BS8-9PU. Then they go directly into the size of the container. Now, I just want to make these 2 answers a bit bigger because this is a common trick, and I want to see if you have caught my deliberate trick here. Now, I've made this a bit bigger so we can see, and I want to take you through the options. Now, notice how length says 1.5 m for meters. Now, since we're talking about a width or a height or a specific number, these answers are not sufficient. And I'm wondering if you have done the same thing on your own or if you did something a bit different. It's a common mistake to write just the number, and it would not be completely correct in this case. You have to include the meter. So you'd have to put either an M, or you could put meters with the American spelling, okay? Now the meter is fine. You could also write the S for meters, or you could also do the European spelling. So this one here is the American spelling, and you could also do the European spelling. There are many ways to do this, but just make sure that you have some sort of note for the meter, because 0.75 on its own is not completely correct. Now, I would stick with exactly what the speaker says. Now, he said 0.75 meters, and he also says wide. So if you wanted to, you could write 0.75 meters wide, because that would still fit in your no more than 3 words and a number guideline, because 0.75 is one number, meters is one word, and wide is another. And so that would just cut it. That would be completely correct. You could also just write 0.75 meters, but you cannot write only 0.75. So keep that in mind. And the same thing goes here for height, 0.5 meters. And he says 0.5 meters high or deep. Now, you could not write 0.5 meters high or deep. You could not write this exact answer because it is more than 3 words and or a number. So that would be incorrect. And that's why you'd have to put 0.5 meters high as one, or another possibility could be 0.5 meters deep but you could not write all 4 of these words. Now going on to the contents, he says that there were some clothes, and then we have books, and she says anything else, and he said toys. So we have number 6 and number 7. Remember, you could also put toys as number 6 and books as number 7, as I've just done here as well. You could also write some toys and some books. That's fine because, again, no more than 3 words and or a number, and placing some in this answer does not change the meaning, so it would be completely fine. Total estimated value, again, it's a common trick to add more numbers than necessary. So if we look here in the transcript, the first thing we heard was 1,500, and so I went ahead and wrote that. Then we heard another 200, so I went ahead and wrote that. And then it said, I'd put down 1,700. And the key word here is total value, which the speaker also said, total value. So we have to pay attention to that total value of 1,700. All right, I hope you did well here. It was quite simple in that we started from the beginning at the top and went all the way to the bottom. And we really used our keywords to our advantage. So excellent job. Now we're going to take a look at our second example. It's going to feature 2 question types. It's going to feature the note and table questions, and we're going to do it all together as though we're in the exam. So let's get ready. Okay, and we're back with our second example for section 2. Now, this is going to be a bit different than the other examples we've done because we'll have the entire section played in the listening prompt. So we have the first half, which will have questions 11 to 16, and the second half, scrolling down here, to questions 17 to 20. So we're not going to have 2 different recordings. We're going to do everything in just one recording. We're going to underline and read information for questions 11 to 16 first. Then we're going to answer these questions. Then we will do the same thing. We'll read and underline for questions 17 through 20, and then fill out this table. So this is something that you would see on the exam, how section 2 has a note for one question type and a table for the other question type. And this would be section 2. And this is great because this way we can see what it's really like to answer 2 different question types with one listening prompt, and that's great practice. Now, I'm going to just scroll up here. Like we did in the previous example, I'm going to underline with you after the directions are read, and then I'm going to write my notes here and stick them on the visual aid, just so that it's clear it's what I would write in the actual exam. Okay, so without further ado, let us listen to the directions. Then we will underline and go through our keywords together.
Section 2. You will hear a radio broadcast called Focus on the Arts. First, you have some time to look at questions 11 to 16 on page 4.
All right, and that is what you would hear in the actual exam. So let's do this quickly. I'll take it a little bit slower for you just so that everything is clear, but I would go ahead and read and underline at the same time only questions 11 to 16. Now, I'd quickly make a note that we have no more than 3 words and or a number. I know we're talking about the arts, something that this is well known for, something it's famous for. Now, the complex is made up of or consists of these things. So, since we have this lengthy list, what I would do is make a small X, so something like this, every time the speaker mentions it. This way you know that the speaker is going in a certain order, and you will hear the one word that is not part of this list, and that is your clue to write it in number 12. So let me just go ahead and erase these marks so we don't get confused when the listening is played, but that's always a great little strategy for any time you see a lot of lists here. All right, then we're going to look at the historical background. I'll underline this. Years and dates are excellent keywords, so 1940, 1960s. I see here with bombs, so I see destroyed and a bomb. Center will be good to note. I see that it's capitalized, so it might be a specific name. Then I want to know when it was open to the public. The fact that we have two dates here will lead us to believe that number 14 should be some sort of date. Then we have managed. We'll want to see who this is managed by. And then open, I want to know how many days per year. The fact that this says days leads me to believe this will be a number. So really quickly before we hear the prompt, you should really pay attention to things that will allow you to write numbers. So I know that days will be looking at an amount of days, and in we'll be looking at some sort of date, because I know that in is a great preposition for dates. So even prepositions can make the difference here. Imagine you didn't know that in comes before a year or a season. This could potentially have been more difficult than it had to be. Okay, so we've done our preparation work for just this section. Let's listen. Remember, I'll be making my notes in these boxes, and I would encourage you to make your outline right along this visual aid. There's no need to create a new outline since this is already in a note outline form. Just go ahead and make your notes here like I will do. All right, let's listen.
Now listen carefully and answer questions 11 to 16.
Hello, and welcome to Focus on the Arts. I'm your host, Dave Green, and this is your very own local radio program. Every Friday evening, we put the spotlight on different arts and culture facilities and look at the shows and events that are on offer in the coming week. And today, the focus is on the National Arts Centre. Now, if you don't already know it yourself, I'm sure you've all heard of it. It's famous throughout the world as one of the major venues for classical music. But did you know that it's actually much more than just a place to hear concerts? The centre itself is a huge complex that caters for a great range of arts. Under a single roof, it houses concert rooms, theatres, cinemas, art galleries, and a wonderful public library, as well as service facilities including 3 restaurants and a bookshop. So, at any one time, the choice of entertainment there is simply enormous. So, how did they manage to build such a big arts complex right in the heart of the city? Well, the area was completely destroyed by bombs during the war in 1940. So the opportunity was taken to create a cultural centre that would be what they called the city's gift to the nation. Of course, it took a while for such a big project to get started, but it was planned in the 60s, built in the 70s, and eventually opened to the public in 1983. Ever since then, it has proved to be a great success. It's not privately owned, like many arts centres, but is still in public hands. It's run by the City Council. Both our National Symphony Orchestra and National Theatre Company were involved in the planning of the project, and they're now based there, giving regular performances every week. And as the centre is open 363 days of the year, there are plenty of performances to choose from.
So I'm just going to clear our screen of the red drawings, and we'll check all of this later just to get the full idea of the exam. I'd like you to do both question types together all at once. So let's scroll down to questions 17 through 20, and we'll listen back to the prompt.
Before you hear the rest of the broadcast, you have some time to look at questions 17 to 20 on page 5.
Okay, same idea. Let's go ahead. This is not really any different in terms of strategy. We just have more things to look for. So we see the day, the time, the event, the venue, and the ticket price. Same thing with no more than 3 words and or a number. But here we've got these nice columns that will help us find the answers. Now, the days of the week will be helpful. We do not have to listen for any days of the week because they're already written for us. So when the speaker talks about Monday and Tuesday, we can immediately check this block here. When the speaker says Wednesday, we can check this block here. And when the speaker says Saturday and Sunday, we know that we are in this row here. Keep in mind we'll have to find a venue for one answer, an event for two answers, and a ticket price for one answer. So the venue that we hear will be number 17, the ticket price will be number 19, and the two events will either be 18 and 20, and we must be specific here. So number 18's answer can only be number 18's answer. Same thing for 20. Now, we should use the words that are listed to our advantage. So make sure you know where these days of the week are located. Times are also important here. Okay, when we hear these numbers, we can immediately go to this row. And we have a ticket price. £8 is the only ticket price here with number. This one is free. Then we have a Canadian film, art exhibition, The Magic Flute by Mozart, Cinema 2, Gallery 1, and free. Now remember to use this visual aid to your advantage again and make your notes right along here or directly on your table. You might see that the speaker gives a couple of descriptions for many things, or the speaker may jump around with what he is saying. If you write something that you later find out was a trick or it's not the correct answer, just mark it out in your notes. It's better to write more than to not write enough. All right, let's go ahead and prepare for our listening 17 to 20.
Now listen and answer questions 17 to 20.
So, to give you some idea of what's on, and to help you choose from the many possibilities, we've made a selection of the star attractions. If you're interested in classical music, then we recommend you go along to the National on either Monday or Tuesday evening at 7:30 for a spectacular production of The Magic Flute, probably the most popular of all Mozart's operas. It's in the Garden Hall, and tickets start at only £8, but you'll have to be early if you want to get them that cheap. And remember, it's only on for those 2 evenings. For those more interested in the cinema, you might like to see the new Canadian film, which is showing on Wednesday evening at 8 p.m. in Cinema 2. And that's called 3 Lives. It's had fantastic reviews, and tickets cost just £4.50, which is a reduction on the usual price of £5.50. So it's really good value, especially for such a great movie. But you can see the centre's main attraction at the weekend, because on Saturday and Sunday, 11 a.m. to 10 p.m, they're showing a wonderful new exhibition that hasn't been seen anywhere else in Europe yet. It's a collection of Chinese art called Faces of China. That's in Gallery 1, and it has some really fascinating paintings and sculptures by leading artists from all over China. And the good news is that it's completely free, so don't miss it. So why not go along to the National Arts Centre next week for one or all of these great events? And you can always pick up a programme and check out all the other performances and exhibitions on offer, or coming soon, on almost every day of the year. Next week, we'll be looking at the new Museum of Science.
That is the end of section 2. You now have half a minute to check your answers.
All right, that's the end of section 2. So in theory, we would have 30 seconds to check our answers, check our notes, make some guesses if we really weren't sure. But you'll see that we sort of did everything at the same time as we were listening. Now I've cleaned it up a little bit. I've gotten rid of the boxes here, but we're going to go over this all together. So I'll scroll back up, and soon you will see the transcript of the entire section on the right-hand side. Okay, and here we are with our transcript. So we'll start from the beginning, and you saw that it came very much in order, just like it would for this question type. Now, he starts off by saying it's famous, so the National Arts Center is famous throughout the world. And I did mention this when we were going through our keywords. Keep your synonyms close, because the listening exam will use various synonyms, different ways to say things to test your knowledge of vocabulary. And so it said it's famous throughout the world as one of the major venues for classical music. And so we have classical music, 2 words. It fits within our structure, and it is the answer to number 11. Now, as going down here for what the complex consists of, you saw that I made general marks and lines to go through the list. The list definitely came in order, And the last thing that was mentioned by the speaker was a bookshop. So he talked about the concert rooms, theaters, cinemas, art galleries, public library, 3 restaurants, and a bookshop. So there we go. Bookshop is the correct answer. Now you could also say bookstore. That would have been accepted just because it would be the American way or North American way to say bookshop, but I would play it safe and write exactly what you hear. Now for the historical background, these dates really did help us because he talked about how the area was destroyed by bombs during the war in 1940. And then he also mentioned the 60s. So you see that 60s was here as a clue. And he said that it was planned in the 60s. So we have this word here. It was planned in the 60s, built in the 70s. Now this is something that was meant to throw us off guard since 70s was not included, but I hope we didn't fall for that. And it said it was opened to the public in 1983. So we have the exact keywords in the transcript, open to public, and then the year 1983. Managed, we see here that it's not privately owned, but it is still in public hands. It's run. So run here is a synonym for managed. It's run by the city council. And lastly, it said that it is open. The keyword open was used 363 days of the year. So here we see 363. We knew it was a number. We also knew that this date here was going to be a number because of the preposition in. So excellent job if you were able to follow along. Now note that the keywords are very important. In general, for any question type on the listening exam, you'll have to pay attention to your synonyms. So even though this is considered one of the easier question types, don't forget about your synonyms. You see here, it's really helpful. Let's focus on the second half of the section now. Okay, we're looking at the second half. Let's start with number 17. Notice how the speaker spoke for a little bit beforehand, but the keywords Monday or Tuesday, 7:30, and the magic flute, these were all given in the transcript. So these are 3 clues that should have told us to look at the venue first. Also, as we know, these are more than likely going to come in order. So 17 was our first answer and the first thing we heard in the transcript. He said it's in the garden hall. So it's pretty quick, and that's why there are so many clues beforehand, because the answer is given and it's pretty quick, so we don't want to miss it. So you could write the garden hall. You could also just write garden hall, but both are correct because the garden hall still fits within our 3 words and or a number. But remember, these articles indefinite and definite are not obligatory. Let's continue on to number 18. We saw the keyword of Canadian film, so that came first. Also cinema, sorry, that came first. We have cinema, Canadian film, Wednesday, 8 p.m., cinema 2, and finally it tells us 3 lives. So notice how there's a lot of buildup, because if you miss it, you really don't have another option. So pay attention to your key words. Then immediately after, it says it had fantastic reviews. Tickets cost just $4.50. Keep in mind, you'll have to put the pound sign just like you see here, or the dollar sign if that is the correct currency. And keep in mind that the transcript tries to confuse you, which is a common trick in the IELTS exam. It said here immediately after 5:50, and they do that on purpose because they know that people will have gotten lost and they'll just be blindly listening. So they'll throw out a couple of prices or a couple of numbers just to confuse you. So always make sure you're listening actively and you're listening attentively. Okay, the last one, we have number 20. It was at the very end. Now, it says again, Saturday and Sunday, 11 a.m. to 10 p.m. Many, many keywords and many clues for us. We see that it is a collection of Chinese art called Faces of China. So I went ahead and wrote that down. There are a couple keywords after as well, so this is a bit more difficult. And it said it's in Gallery 1, which is right here. And then at the very end, it said it was completely free. So notice how this last one was the most difficult because it had some keywords at the end after the answer had already been said. Okay, so there we have it. I really hope you were able to follow along with me. Notice how everything came in order and the outline was provided for us. So in section 1, we would usually keep a chart with 2 different speakers, but our section 1 example earlier did not require us to keep track of details of speakers. So we went ahead and just used the visual aid that was given to us. It made it a lot easier and a lot quicker. And for section 2, we definitely expected a monologue, but this outline format in the first example was perfect because we were able to keep notes as though this was our own outline. We kept notes and we answered the questions at the same time. So we were multitasking. And the table was excellent because it gave us keywords before and sometimes after. The biggest thing here is to really keep up with the speaker and brush up on your synonyms. All right, great job. Let's wrap up this lesson with some do's and don'ts. Okay, it's time to wrap up this lesson now with a couple of do's and don'ts. First off, remember to obviously utilize your time. Now you saw that we didn't have that much to underline in terms of keywords and information, but still make sure that you are using those full 20 seconds to gather everything you need to have the best level of comprehension for your listening transcript. Also, in this time, you could study up on synonyms if you have some time. The synonyms will probably be basic. So for example, today we looked at well-known and famous in our last example, but just be aware that the speaker can use different words to say a couple of words that are already on the outline or the form or the table. This can be done before test day, so make sure you prepare. Then as you're listening, follow and use the visual aid to your advantage. This is very important. You can make your notes right along it. You can make some marks for things that have been said. Really use that visual aid. And of course, since you're writing out things, make sure to write clearly. As always, we suggest capital letters and making sure that everything is legible. Now for some don'ts, make sure you don't waste time. This is directly linked to our steps up here above, utilizing your time, the full 20 seconds. Probably the worst thing you can do is focusing on only one aspect. Because if you focus on one aspect, you may forget to be taking notes, you might forget to be crossing things off, and you might get lost, especially in a monologue like we saw in section 2. Once you get lost, it's very hard to recover from that. So practice your multitasking skills beforehand and don't keep an entirely separate outline. If you've watched our other videos, we actually do suggest keeping charts and outlines on your test booklet right next to the words that you're reading. But in this case, in this specific question type, it's actually best if you use the visual aid that is given to you. You don't want to put any extra work for yourself if the visual aid is already an outline. Also, don't write the incorrect amount of words. Make sure that you are paying attention to your instructions with 1 word only, or 2 words, or 3 words and a number. Our first example had a really good way of looking at this because we had a lot of numbers and words together. And of course, don't leave anything blank. This is the worst thing you could do. Even if you do get lost within the monologue or the conversation, try to write something and hope for the best. Take your best guess. It's better than nothing. All right, I really hope that you enjoyed this lesson today. Like I said, it is one of the most common and sought after question types because it's considered quite easy, but you'll still need to practice it. You don't want to fall for these tricks. You don't want to fall for long monologues and getting lost. So practice this again, follow up on your time, and make sure that you're really taking it seriously. Of course, you can visit us at www.bestmytest.com transcript.com/IELTS for more practice tests, for more examples, and for more lessons. We're waiting for you over there, so go ahead and visit us and continue practicing to get the best score possible. Thanks so much again. Have an excellent day. I'll see you for the next lesson.